Welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. This is our full reaction to tonight's Sky Sports and Boxer show, obviously headlined by Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams. Before we get into this, we're so close on 500 subscribers now, so please, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help us out. So let's get into it. Very interesting night. I think we'll go straight to the main event. Eubank Jr., Liam Williams. In fairness to Eubank, he came out quick, and I think in the build-up to this, many people it was a 50-50 split. People were talking about Williams winning it. Personally, as a channel, I think we backed Eubank, and obviously he has come out on top for those that don't know. And it was 4 knockdowns he got that was the difference. He got a knockdown in the first round, and in fairness to Liam Williams, he probably looked better in that first round until that knockdown came. And it was with a jab. It was a slightly bizarre knockdown. In fact, he got a couple of the knockdowns were off the jab. And I think what we've learned about Chris Eubank Jr. tonight is that partnership with Roy Jones Jr., it's sort of shown fruits now for him. He's definitely boxing better. I mean, he boxed brilliantly tonight off the back foot throughout. And there's a little bit of sort of controversy possibly between the commentators because Sky's commentators had Williams coming back into it throughout and sort of thought there was a couple of points in it and it was a close fight. But it's one of those where it depends what you want from a fight. Do you want the come forward aggression, which in fairness, after the knockdowns through into the 4th round, Williams brought that? Or do you want the classy boxing off the back foot? I mean, Eubank rode Williams' shots brilliantly tonight. Let's not take anything away from his performance. And it was in Cardiff, in Williams' backyard. So, you know, as they said, he's gone into sort of the lion's den or the dragons, as the Welsh like to use. And it didn't faze Eubank one bit. So I was very impressed. I mean, it was very like his dad tonight. He was very showboaty, off the back foot. I mean, the 12th round, he just ran for the whole of it, to be fair to him. Was doing the shuffle. At various points in the fight, you know, if anyone that watched the gloves are off, he was drawing the line like, come at me. Let's have this fight that Williams wanted to make it. But I think Eubank established his class and power early, and I think that made Liam Williams sort of wary in the early and middle rounds. He did come into it, in fairness, and it was a great recovery, but it wasn't enough, and that's the key bit. Just as the debate was really sort of heating up, and I'll be honest, I was starting to think, can Williams possibly force a draw with it being in his hometown? Eubank he came out much more aggressive in the 11th, and he gets another key knockdown, which I think that, you know, that was sort of the final nail in the coffin, if you like. So a great main event, and I think you have to move on to now what's next for Eubank Jr. He's 32 years old. Obviously, that was really the fight between rank 1 and 2 at middleweight in Britain. Eubank's won that. It now has to be a world title shot. Obviously, Golovkin's fight got postponed over between Christmas and New Year. Nothing's really been announced on that. So I wonder, can he get that fight? Lots of talk about Andrade and Zach Parker at super middleweight in the WBO situation. Can we force that fight? That's a big fight on these shores. And it would be a bigger name for Andrade than what he's used to potentially fighting. No disrespect to a Williams or even a Jason Quigley more recently. It's got to be a world title shot now. You know, Sky can really put their flag in Chris Eubank. And with performances like tonight, you know, he's going to make a bigger name for himself. He's already got the family name. But hopefully tonight with Roy Jones, he can start and break out more. And it'll be about him and really sort of, as much as you can with the same name, step out of that family shadow. This fight, it was supported with a great undercard, in fairness. I mean, the co-main event chief support, whichever you prefer, Clarissa Shields versus Emma Kozen, defending her unified middleweight titles, Shields. A lot was made of this as sort of semi-final fights, if you like, for her and Savannah Marshall. Savannah Marshall's out in March. And then obviously that big undisputed middleweight title fight, hopefully in the summer. And Kozen was coming into this undefeated. Now, don't get me wrong, she's not been in with major names, but still an undefeated fighter. A chance to really crash the party against one of the biggest names in boxing, especially obviously the women's boxing. But in fairness, she just didn't have the quality tonight. Only 23. I think the occasion was too big. I mean, Clarissa Shields was so calm and classy in everything she did. She landed regularly, landed well. But there's one big question mark for me. for all of her talents, she really lacked that finishing ability, you know, that predatory instinct that, in fairness, Savannah Marshall has. I think it was definitely in the 4th and 5th round. I felt Marshall should have really been Shields, should have been taking her out, and she just couldn't get that finish. I mean, she said herself afterwards she thought the referee would be stopping the fight at various points. That never happened, but she did pick up the win, 100-90 on all the cut scorecards. So it was as dominant as you can get without knockdowns and knockouts, in fairness to her. And then we had the tasty sort of exchange between Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields on the mic, which was, you know, it's always interesting, isn't it? It helps build a fight. I mean, Michaela Mayer was there working for Sky, and she said that fight's just got 10 times bigger because it did get quite heated. I mean, we saw Ben Shalom pile in to think, oh, hang on, is this going to get a bit too much? And security were there. I mean, a particular highlight for me was Savannah Marshall saying, wind your neck in. That did make me laugh. But so, guys, if you haven't seen that, check that out. It was really good. The next fight that we'll look at, another female boxing fight, but a debut, Caroline Dubois versus Massia Carte. Hope I've got that right. If I haven't, I do apologise. Now, Caroline Dubois, she's only 21, but Sky have really hyped this signing up, and so they should. You know, Daniel Dubois' younger sister, so she's got that profile, particularly with British fight fans immediately. A very, very decorated amateur, youth European world champion, I think youth Olympic. Like, she's done it all, and she's still only 21. 37-3, I believe, is her amateur record. So the pressure's on. And in fairness to Dubois, brilliant performance. You know, she came out fast. She had some absolute quality. She's boxing well beyond her years for me. Showed fantastic hand speed, really good balance. And she really was, you know, Michaela Mayer said it herself, fighting like almost a younger Clarissa Shields at times, which she'll be buzzing with. And, you know, and it's even more impressive when you look at the opponent, Massia Carte. You know, she did get stopped by Chantel Cameron, but she's also been the distance with Natasha Jonas. So she's a credible, a tough opponent for your first fight, and she's durable. She knows how to get to the final bell. But she won every round, 60-54. I just hope they don't build Dubois too much too soon. She's only 21. On social media, I had a quick chat with a guy, and he sort of agreed. There's no need to rush her. She can go for world honours in 2024. For me, keep her busy this year. Let her work on her craft. And almost the training camps will be as important as the fights. Let her get there with Shane McGuigan. Let him really work on her and, you know, hone the craft before they make that jump up. Adam Smith, he's took a bit of a slagging tonight on Twitter. And normally I would try and defend him, but Sky get accused of bias. And it was quite bad tonight, to be fair. They're not helping her for me. You know, while it's good for a broadcaster or a promoter to back their fighter, you can put too much pressure on someone. And that was sort of the vibe it was tonight. And I don't want to get too negative into it because, you know, it's a fantastic debut for her. Really showed some class. And it was a good night all round for Sky, in fairness. But just with that, they need to tone that down. We know how good Caroline Dubois is and possibly could be. You know, we don't need Adam Smith ramming it down our throats every 15 seconds. We'll move on. Next fight, Chris Jenkins versus Julie Sundongo. Now, for those that don't know, we had Chris Jenkins on our channel last week to promote this fight. What a guy, a really top guy. Gave us a really honest interview. So if you haven't, do check that out because he really was brilliant. And he won. Chris Jenkins won. Great for Britain, great for Wales, obviously. And it was a good fight. I mean, a lot was made of, and again, you're going about Sky bias. You could tell that, you know, as Chris told us, it was a one-fight deal potentially with Sky and Boxer. And they sort of were almost talking down Julius Ndongo, you know, the fact that he's coming off back-to-back losses, he's been stopped recently, and the fact that he's 38, seen better days. But let's be honest, Chris Jenkins, as good as he is, and he's been in some fantastic fights in Britain, some truly memorable fights, it has to be said about him that he's British level. You know, I do think personally, if he'd been managed better early in his career, he could have gone up to the, you know, the European level. Obviously, that didn't quite happen for him with Frank Warren, and as we talked about, he couldn't get the Ben fight. But Ndongo's been in with, you know, Regis Prograis, Terence Crawford, you know, Ricky Burns. The list goes on. So this was still a big fight for Jenkins, and he nailed it. He really did. A great game plan by Gary Lockett and executed perfectly by Chris. it was a patient first round. He was bobbing and weaving. And, in fairness to Ndongo, he was on his toes, but Jenkins, he had him working. And I think that was the only bit I did agree with about him being 38. That's the perfect thing, let's get all his energy gone. Let's zap the 38-year-old legs. And it worked. Jenkins came out in the second and third round, up the work rate, and started to think the stoppage was on, to be totally honest. It was really there for him. And then, as the fight wore on, Chris talked about afterwards the fact that he thinks he broke his hand. So fingers crossed you haven't, Chris. If you see this, I'd love to see you back out and let's really have a big year for you. As you said, you want yourself. But Jenkins started to give him more space. And Ndongo, it was always controlled by Chris Jenkins, but Ndongo did have a little bit more success. But it went to the scorecards, 78-75 to Chris Jenkins. Definitely well-deserved, an entertaining fight. So, yeah, well done, Chris. On to the next one. Let's hope the hand's not too bad. And then we'll just quickly, we'll talk about Steve Robinson versus Shane Gill. Now, Shane Gill's from Tipton. That's not too far from where us guys on this channel are. And in fairness, Steve Robinson's been a lot of noise about him on social media. And I think, Boxer have really sort of created a bit of a hype about him. He's 4-0 coming into this, but he lost. And lost quite badly for me, particularly the first 3 rounds. Gill was game, and you could tell they talked about the fact he's booked to fight next week, which he may not need to do now, because you'd imagine Box will try and make that rematch if they're going to stick with Robinson. But Robinson was just looking for power shots. There wasn't much in the way of a jab. His hands were down, no head movement, which that's sort of okay. There's difference in levels. Obviously, Steve Robinson's a novice, but you go to Chris Eubank Jr. tonight. His hands were down, not too much, but he was on the back foot. He was running around. His footwork was there. Steve Robinson did not have any footwork. This was I think Sonny Edwards actually put it on Twitter. He's usually entertaining. And it was a very white collar fight. He got hit with a lot of flush shots. And he was a walking punching bag at times. Now, not just to slag him off. He's 31, so he hasn't got that much time to develop, but he does need to decide. He's talking a lot on social media and in interviews about, sparring with Hughie Fury. He sparred with Joshua. I think the commentator said he's supposed to be going out to spar with Dillian White. Well, that's fantastic, and it will help you develop, but he probably needs to do some more with guys more his own level. So, because I refuse to believe after tonight he's having any success against these sorts of guys unless they're just letting him. And he needs to really work on his craft, develop some defense, because he's got some power about him. He's in shape. He clearly lives the life. But at 31, if he wants to be a professional boxer, he needs to move with it. And, he should take advantage of it because Sky and Boxer they are pushing him. So it'll be interesting to see what's next for him. As I say, I think you'd assume they'd try and get the rematch in a few months' time. Then on the undercard, Samuel Antwi did get the win over Wolverhampton's own Conor Walker in the English welterweight title fight. That was a great fight. So, guys, if you haven't, definitely check that fight out. Harlem Eubank moved to 13-0. He forced his opponent to retire, I think, in the 5th round. And then the last one, Otto Warlin. Now, obviously, he made a lot of noise about Dillian White pulling out their fight with injury. Obviously, his reputation's been massively elevated by the fact, obviously, he gave Tyson Fury a hard night work. But tonight he fought Kamil Sokolovsky, who, he's 10 wins and 24 losses, whatever his exact record is. In recent times, he's lost to Solomon Dakers, who's a good prospect, but he's a prospect. Otto Warlin's claiming to be at world level. And through 3 rounds, he was being outthrown and outlanded by Kamil Sokolovsky. Now, Sokolovsky's game... and he's the sort of opponent that's quite hard to look good against. But if Otto Warlin's seriously calling world champions out, afterwards he's talking about Andy Ruiz or even Dillian White. No, that was a poor performance tonight. Some people on Twitter, I do think Warlin probably edged it, but it was close. Some people seem to be thinking Sokolovsky actually won the fight. So really disappointing from him tonight. And, that was a little bit of a coup this week for Sky to get that fight added to the card. And you'd assume it's a keep busy fight for whether it be Hughie Fury, possibly. That could be a fight that would be good on Sky. But based off tonight, I'd back Hughie Fury to walk all over him, to be totally honest. Really poor from him. So again, check that out because it's quite shocking if I'm being brutally honest. I'll wrap it up there, guys. Let us know what you guys thought of tonight in the comment section. I think the one thing we will all agree on, how good is it to have boxing back in Britain? And we go now to a busy schedule the next few weeks. So we've got lots more content coming. We've got a great announcement coming on Monday that we're really excited about, I should say. And hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thanks ever so much.